And like I said, we'll go ahead and get underway here and just kind of touch on anything that needs to be touched on. I do want to make a couple of quick announcements and reminders. So we do have a progress update opportunity today, and this is one that provides for weight, girths, and pictures. So try to update those if you haven't done so already. For the guys that are acutely on the call, for those of you that are going to view this after the fact, do please try to fill that out, even if it's a difficult for you. That's such valuable information, especially at this point for me in terms of guiding you, troubleshooting, assisting in maintaining perspective in terms of at least the physical physical side of things. Obviously, we're trying to keep in mind the fitness and health as well as the performance-related benefits too. So I do recommend filling those out. From there, we are going to be beginning the second week of the Healthy Fats Habit, and we'll be kicking that off on Monday. And then we'll transition into a new habit a week from Monday that will begin to tie together all the quote-unquote food habits. As I sent out in the individual group messages to the fat loss group and the muscle gain group, in terms of your PN plate, you guys do have all the components that you need and that you'll get in terms of the 4 food components and their portions: protein, colorful plants, smarter carbs, and healthy fats. And those will be what composes our plate moving forward. And so you're good to go there. We'll be starting to transition into, now that we know what to eat and how to eat and when to eat for most groups. For both groups, we'll begin to talk about how to consistently put those plates together. So this is the phase where we get into planning meals, anticipating, strategizing, and so on and so forth when it comes to our meals. And we'll build into that in the coming weeks. I will look into where we are with the present training phase, so continue to shoot for consistency there, even if it means just the short version or home version as opposed to the full version. The full version is an option. Knock it out, and then look for those small improvements week to week. And then from there, instead of a lecture portion that I typically do on these sessions, as we missed a couple of weeks just from me being on vacation and some other things, more along the lines of what I want to do is see if there's any direct questions related to, first, the smarter carbs, second, our healthy fats, and then third, PN plate composition, and then just anything related to housekeeping type stuff related to movement or operational stuff in terms of the program to date that we've covered so far, housekeeping related things. And then we can stay on as long as we need to or hop off as quickly as we need to, and then go from there. So Io, just in general, is there anything that you want to add in terms of the last 2 food habits, or anything you've seen that you feel is worth relaying in terms of any of the feedback related things you've been working on your side of things? And it's fine if you don't, just curious.
Yeah, only that people are a lot of questions about the portion size, and it's getting back down to the measuring with your hand, and how does that tally with what people are seeing on the internet about how many carbs they need for their own body, how close those 2 estimations are. Not sure if that was clear enough, but how close your cupped handful to what they say is the amount of carbs for you, and should you use a different sort of measurement or try and get them more complicated?
Yeah, so it's a good question, and one that we do hear a lot. And I kind of, for lack of a better term, baited the muscle gain groups specifically with some of the questions I asked in the recent message, looking to clarify that. So before we get to that, let's quickly talk about the portion sizes for fats. This is something that Philip and I have talked about and a number of guys have been discussing. In terms of the portion size for fats, obviously fats are very, very beneficial. They're very healthy. The lessons this week talked and spoke to that. But at the same time, as great a nutrient as it is, we know that it's very, very nutrient dense, calorie dense, twice that and then some of protein and carbs. So we want to make sure that we are very, we have an attention to detail in terms of the portion sizes with these. So the thumb version for your solid foods like nuts or avocado or things like that, typically the pictures that are provided in their habit card and the early lessons of the week do a good job of really giving you a visual of what that would look like. Things for like peanut butter, guacamole, I guess you could even scoop out the part of an avocado like Philip and I were talking about earlier this week. You're going to do well to use something along the lines of a kitchen or baking tablespoon. You'll come out with about the size of a large grape in terms of your serving size. and or just a kitchen teaspoon, something that you would stir up a cup of tea with or eat your cereal with or something like that. If you lay your thumb down right into that spoonful, that spoon, it's going to hit basically the size that you need, or pretty close to it. And generally speaking, we always overestimate when it comes to fats. So if we're a little bit small or a little bit visually lacking, that's kind of really what we're aiming for, because it is something that we tend to overestimate, or we over eyeball, or we over ballpark. So at least as you get a feel for this particular habit, I would do those type of measurements where if you need to double check yourself with, like I said, a teaspoon or a kitchen tablespoon to kind of get a good feel for that, that's going to be beneficial for you. In terms of the translation of the hand-based portions, palm, cupped handful, fist, or thumb, in relation to quote unquote what is out there. If we were to take any one of those portions and build a plate, and then we were to go old school or new school, depending on how you look at it, and calculate out the macros for a given person, and then break those up by meal, and say that we had a given meal in front of us that aligned with those macros, what you're going to find is, for your size, for your body type, and as that coincides with the size of your hand, if you were to weigh that food or do those individual measurements, you're going to find that you're really damn close. So where I'm going with that is your hand is just as good, if not an equally important or almost equal variable in terms of figuring out what portion sizes would be for you. So if you're a big guy, and you're measuring out a palm or two if you're muscle gain, or a cupped handful or a fist or two for your vegetables and fruit for vegetables. If you're using a cupped handful or two for your fists, for your smart carbs, obviously those are similar from your plant stuff, and a thumb for your fat, you're going to be very, very close. So a lot of guys will talk about, well, I wish it was a little bit more individualized. I wish it was a little bit more specific to me. It is. It's just not in a way that you're used to, or what you would typically recognize, or by a lot of the quote unquote noise that's out there. So that's why it's so important, especially when we start talking about food amounts and food types, to really kind of keep an open mind, a learner's mind, to unpack a lot of what you know or what you think you know, and kind of really keep an open mind here. Because again, if we were to go back and do the math, in terms of those calculations, which are not necessary unless you're upwards of a level 3 type eater. And even then I would argue that they're not. The numbers that you would find, and as it coincides with breaking down your meals that you're building in relation to your hand sizes, it's going to be very, very close, or close enough. And like we said, when we're at the level that most of us are at, which is 99.8% of the guys in this program, as I joked about earlier in the program, close enough counts in horseshoes, hand grenades, and nutrition. The job is going to be, it's going to get the job done in terms of closeness. So if you're somebody who has those questions about individualization or customization to you and that sort of thing, if you're using your hands and you're letting hunger of varying intensities guide you, whether you're a muscle gain person or a fat gain person, it's pretty individualized and it's pretty customized to you based on those metrics and those variables. Is that fair enough, Io? Does that kind of help clear that up a little bit, or at least provide a little insight?
Absolutely.
Perfect. And this is obviously a discussion that we've had before, not in this group, but in general that comes up. So
just a recurring theme, so just thought we could to go over it again here.
Yeah. It's a matter of, we don't want to make it hard or complicated if we don't need to. And many of us, the fact of the matter is that it doesn't need to be as customized or as individualized as most people believe. But take heart in knowing that, and rest assured in knowing that if you're looking for those type of specifics, you're getting that in using your hand portion, because it coincides so well with your body type and your body size. So that's a great point. I'm glad you brought that up. And then from the standpoint of the fats and the carbs, keep exploring different options. Be a little bit more specific with your portion sizes. There's all kinds of carbs out there. Obviously, there's fruits and there's potatoes and rices and those sort of things, but there are also things like tapioca and your ancient grains. There's all kinds of different types of examples out there. When it comes to fat, the same thing. Another common question is, am I getting a good balance of my saturated, monounsaturated, and polyunsaturated fats? And it's kind of a worrying and wondering type question that comes when we start talking about the healthy fats habit. If you're getting a good variety of oils and nuts and olives and avocado and things like that, it's a pretty good bet you're getting a pretty good balance of that, especially if you're a plant-based eater. You're getting some of those saturated fats and some of the meats that you eat, not a plant-based eater, an omnivore-based eater. You're getting those in. So you're going to get a good variety of that as well, pretty much almost by default. So just wanted to kind of bring that up too. Philip, anything that you want to add in relation to the last two habits or common things that you felt as a student and or mentor of the program to this point in the program in terms of your perspective?
Yeah, you mentioned that this time of year, the attendance typically drops. I've noticed in the last couple of rounds, this was the time of year that I kind of stopped paying so much attention. Do you have any tips to keep us engaged? Members, myself, other ones? I know I typically, just the other day, went back to my 5 whys.
Yeah.
That helped a lot. But
well, look at the life situation that many of us are in right now, just as a general rule. Especially if we have kids, they're in school, things are kind of ramping up. You're probably getting the first round of report cards and progress reports at this time. The holidays are approaching. There may not necessarily be the tangible time to sit down at 11 o'clock Central Time for a coaching session or a PN-based session. So first and foremost is to leverage the fact that we do record these sessions. I do recommend a lot of guys, and I tried to reiterate this yesterday when I sent out the meeting update, is that if you have a question or you have something you'd like to see discussed or covered on the call, just because you're here doesn't mean you're not here doesn't mean we can't discuss it. You can send me a question in advance and we can definitely talk about it. In terms of just the general, disengagement is probably the wrong word at this juncture, but just the general rigors of life that tend to happen at this program. There is a little bit of a drop that happens at that 12 to 14 week mark in the program. And it's not a motivation thing or anything like that. For most, it just becomes a life gets in the way, life happens, kind of an attention thing. So it's a matter of putting those structures and systems in place, like tangible reminders on your phone to be sure to check in or to log in and do your readings and or provide feedback. Or, you know what, if your typical means of doing that isn't working, in other words, if you have a typical time during the day that doesn't work, then you have to deviate course, you have to change course. Maybe you're doing your reading materials by listening it in the car on to and from work, or during a little bit of quiet bathroom time, you're reading your stuff or going through that kind of thing. They're all viable options there. You just kind of have to learn to duck and weave with life as it happens. And then beyond that, it's just really a mindfulness and kind of always something versus all or nothing type of outlook, in my opinion, and kind of look at it. And you do a great job of calling out, just revisiting your 5 whys, why you're here in the program. If you notice, wow, holy shit, I haven't checked in 4 or 5 days, or Coach Scott sent me a message asking me 2 or 3 questions about where I was, and I hadn't gotten back to him yet. It's just kind of working on those pieces and making sure that you're doing at least your minimal bit to stay engaged until such a time where things kind of get more to a sprints period versus a maintenance period. Does that make sense?
It does.
Because life definitely happens. We go through times where the holiday shopping are approaching. It might be the end of the quarter or beginning of quarter, depending on our jobs and our work-related situations. So it's just a matter of being mindful of going, like you had said, why did you enroll in the program in the first place? What are the things that you're trying to accomplish? Are you putting yourself in a better position to accomplish those, or at least to do what you can for the time being to keep your nose above water, so to speak, that you don't regress until such a time where you can quote-unquote sprint.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm. I hope that's helpful. It's just kind of at least my experience with it.
Yeah, it is.
Cool. And then Uday or Rich, we got you guys on the call. Anything that you want to add, chime in about, any questions that you guys had, or are you just hanging out and listening?
One thing I learned that I didn't know before was that you could actually cook with avocados, using avocado instead of some kind of oil.
Mm-hmm.
To saute and things. Can you talk a little bit more about that? I'm intrigued.
Yeah, so avocado oil
then
is a thing. Yeah, there is such a thing as avocado oil, and you can cook with it. Coconut oil. There's a number of different.
This one said use actual avocado. It says scoop stuff out, put it on your pan. It was in one of the lessons. I think it was like a link to something in one of the lessons.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, You can definitely do that. You spoon out or measure out about a portion of it. I've never actually cooked with avocado or guacamole, but I know that I've done it with oil. I'm sure that if you spread it around the plate a little bit, it would act as a lubricant as well as a flavor enhancer for that meal that you're cooking. So yeah, definitely something to experiment with.
Yeah, because we normally use canola oil, and I'm not too happy with canola, but because one of the things that we said was the great omega-3. I think that's more omega-6 than omega-3. I mean, that's going too much, but if there's a better way to cook, hey, why not?
Yeah, and one thing to look at too is that, and this is something that comes up, I think I had a guy ask about this in a message earlier today, and I actually sent back some additional questions because I wasn't exactly sure what he was getting at, but I gave the impression that he was asking this, was that if you're cooking with a particular type of oil, whether it's guacamole, avocado oil, guacamole, coconut oil, even lower temperature meals, if you're doing olive oil or what have you, do you need to add some additional fat to that meal? So for example, if you cook some eggs in any type of oil, and you have eggs, veggies, and say some fruit or a piece of Ezekiel toast or whatever you choose for your carb to round out your plate there, do you need to add any other fat in that situation? And if you're cooking with an oil, I would typically say no, especially if you're cooking an animal-based protein source with it, or having an animal-based palm of protein with your meal. Say if you're an omnivore and you're cooking veggies with a fat-based substrate there, you probably don't need to add any more fat to that meal, especially if the meal is eggs or salmon or something along those lines, because the fat content of that meal can get very high. If you're somebody who likes toast, for example, I know I'm a big toast fan. Ezekiel toast is one of my jams. If I'm cooking with those and I'm making eggs or that sort of thing, I'm probably not going to put guacamole or peanut butter on my toast. I might just go with a low fruit spread, or even eat it quote unquote dry, instead of putting some other nut butter on it for fat, because it's probably going to end up being more than that serving that I need in that case. Whereas if I just cook it spray it with Pam, or it's a nonstick pan and I cook it without the oils, then in those cases I probably would add those additional fats. But you have to look at that cumulative sort of thing with the fats. That's kind of, I think, what we might be working on indirectly as well, Philip. Is some of those. Yeah,
I'm nodding my head.
Yeah, I think I saw that out of the corner of my eye while you were talking. So does that make sense to you, Dave?
Yes, sir. And one of my favorite breakfasts is from your hometown. Is the Elvis sandwich, but the modified Ezekiel bread with a little bit of nut butter and sliced bananas on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes I even put some raisins on it, but yeah, no frying, of course. But
well, here and there,
it's one of my favorites.
Yeah, that brought me to something I was going to say, and I lost my train of thought. But yeah, no, that's actually another good question. And that if you're cooking with an oil or a fat, you probably don't necessarily need to add any additional fat to that meal. And then the other side of it too is, unless you're in muscle gain and you're a really lean, hard gaining type of dude, if you're eating salmon or a serving of protein is 2 palms for you guys. If you're eating 4 eggs with a given meal, which would be your serving of eggs for muscle gain, you probably don't need to add any additional fat to that meal.
Yeah.
Again, unless you're somebody who's really lean and has always had trouble gaining weight. So I can look at y'all's pictures and kind of help specify there. But generally speaking, in those situations, you're going to probably be getting most, if not all, the fat that you need in that that indirect method. Good question.
How much do you count the fat in salmon? I just had salmon last night, and I had avocado slices as well. Am I having too much then? Too much fat?
It's possible. If you're eating something like a really fatty fish like salmon, or like I said, if you're somebody who eats a lot of eggs or nut butters and that thing kind of throughout the days, especially in the instance of salmon, it can be a fairly fatty fish. So there may or may not be the need to add some additional fat. Certainly a little bit of avocado with it or that sort of thing is going to give you another type of fat in that situation. So that's where we really want to look. If we are going to add something like avocado in that case, you really want to make sure that you're being tight with the portion sizes. And then it becomes an individual thing in terms of looking at the trend of your progress and how your each measurement update subsequently looks as we line them up together. And then that might be something that you potentially could make an adjustment with again, based on how you're doing. And then, of course, we eat it slowly, mindfully into 80% full. We leave a little bit of both on the plate, so on and so forth. But again, it's kind of looking at how your trends look and everything there, Rich. But I would say probably I would add less or minimal amounts of fat to some of those meals where fat is going to be prevalent in the case of something like a salmon or another type of fatty fish.
Okay. This may, in terms of the avocado, it looked like the recommendation was something like a quarter of an avocado would be a good way to get some healthy fats. How in the heck do you store the rest of the avocado to keep it from browning and going bad?
Yeah, as you can imagine, that's one that I fielded before. Probably the top two ways that I find pretty successful is that you can drizzle it with some lemon or lime juice and put it in a small, fairly Tupperware container with that lemon juice on it and get as much oxygen out of there as you can. So you want to use a small Tupperware container where the avocado fits fairly tight in there, and or a plastic sandwich or snack bag. And again, push as much air out of there as you can and make sure you seal it really well. And then you probably want to use that avocado over the course of the next few days to kind of minimize that oxidation and get that in there. The other thing is you can kind of skin a layer off the avocado as well. Where it browns, it's usually just on the surface. You can make that adjustment too.
Okay.
Leave the stone in as well. Sorry, leave the stone in as well with the stuff you leave behind. That keeps it fresher for longer.
The pit?
Yeah.
That's something you can do as well. It kind of helps preserve it. Thank you. I forgot about that. But yeah, lemon juice, lime juice, some sort of citrus, and then minimize the oxygen exposure. And like avocado, like Io said, leave the core or the pit in there.
Okay.
Same thing with guacamole. If you uncork it or peel the thing back, the package back, seal it pretty tight. You can drizzle a little bit of the lime juice on the rim of the container and or the top of the guac, and it'll help keep a little bit longer. And the other thing is, again, it oxidizes just on the surface. So if you can use a knife or a peeler, like you'd peel a tomato or peel a cucumber or something like that, or a potato. You can peel that quick layer off, and it's usually pretty green and fresh underneath too. I find those are typically best practices with some of those whole foods that can oxidize and go bad. If you use bananas, if you got a whole batch of bananas from the grocery store, and then you have a couple that are starting to brown a little bit, keep them away from each other because of the gas that's being given off by those bananas as they ripen will affect the fresher bananas too, so keep them away. We always have bananas on either side of our stove on our counters where we keep them to deal with that. So just another suggestion there. Cool, guys. What else? Anything on training, housekeeping, best practices, coaching sessions, anything like that anybody has?
I'm finding the exercise, the training going pretty well. I've been glad that the Saturday one has been the more upper body strength. I get a little more time for that in my morning then, and able to get it all in. Mm-hmm. I think I struggle in some of those where I use a band in the door for something like, instead of a cable pull, you use a band. But we're getting there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and with a band as the rowing mechanism or the rowing medium there and everything like that, is it as good as a cable? It depends on kind of where you are, but I find the same thing. If I'm at the gym and doing a gym-based workout, a pulley and cable system is probably your quote-unquote best option. But I also have some bands that I'll anchor in the door and do single arm rows with, or even when I'm working towards, I can turn around and do chest presses with them. Does it feel as good or quote unquote as effective? To me, it doesn't, I'll be honest. But it's better than nothing. So you just kind of really focus on the technical aspect of pulling with the back, really working on the technique side of things, really squeezing at the top and bottom of each rep, and so on and so forth. So sometimes it's good to have that, but again, it's just that always something versus all or nothing type of perspective there.
There's one of the exercises that we've had in this set that using a band for the home workout. The demonstration is a band for doing like a one arm or single arm shoulder press overhead. I find that I prefer just to use a single dumbbell. Is that a reasonable trade? It's not one of the modifications.
Yes. I would go band or dumbbell in that situation. You could even use a kettlebell if you had one. You're going to get that same amount or a similar amount of tension throughout the movement. You're going to have a little bit of instability involved with the band or the dumbbell. So I would probably, if it was me, I would probably alternate session to session. So next week, if I use the dumbbell last week, I might use the band, and the following week I'd use the dumbbell just to kind of keep myself fairly well rounded. But yeah, to answer your question, yes, you could absolutely use a dumbbell in that case if you have that at your disposal. I think the band is probably an alternative in that case where we're thinking that a person may not have said piece of equipment at home. But yeah, I would either mix it up. I would mix it up and or find what works best for you there.
It seems like there's at least one of the at-home workouts that uses that recommends a cable machine, which would seem a little surprising. But one thing I do to mix it up with the equipment I have available is I follow sometimes a mixed combination of the at-home and full workout.
Yep.
Just depends on what I have available. I'll have a ball available that won't be specified necessarily in the at-home workout, but I have that, so I'll use that instead of no ball.
Yep, I do the same thing. A lot of times I do the PN workout specifically for me, I do the PN workouts for like lower body sessions and that sort of thing, just because of the way my knees are. I can't, on my other program, I can't front squat or back squat as much the way my knees are, but I can goblet squat. I can do reverse lunges and that sort of thing. So, and or depending on equipment availability, I will absolutely hybridize either different types of workouts that I'm doing, or I will hybridize the home version and the gym version based on the equipment. So there are some instances where I use the home version at the gym, and then I'll use a gym version at home if it's more of a dumbbell or a rowing based type of movement. So yeah, I think that's great. That really kind of falls into that always something type of perspective. And if you can kind of, again, hybridize a little bit, I definitely think that's great. A good way to go.
The last question I had, I think, was about the days where we don't have the prescribed workout, active recovery days.
Yeah.
Am I working too hard if I had been trying to run, but Achilles injury caught up with me again, and I've had to eliminate running for a bit again. But I've been trying some a DVD of some following some high intensity, some of it's high intensity interval training. About 15 to 20 minutes of that. Is that doing too much to my body where I'm supposed to be doing active recovery?
Let me answer this way and see if it helps or narrows it down. So when we do our active recovery days, the real goal, quote unquote, real goal is to make those recovery days as far from purposeful exercise as possible, at least how we and I like to interpret it. So we're doing active recovery where, in my case, for an example, would be it's going to warm up this afternoon. I'm actively recovering today. So I'm throwing both of my boys that are about 30 pounds apiece in a wagon, and we're going for a 25 to 30-minute walk through the neighborhood with the dog. We're also going to be doing and/or some yard work where I'm going to be stooping and weeding and kind of moving a wheelbarrow around and that kind of thing. It might be going for a light walk, going for a brisk walk in your neighborhood or a hike. Some guys have gone to their gym and they're going to get on the bathing suit and they're going to tread water for 20 to 30 minutes. If you're somebody who enjoys running and you can run in a way that is breathing mainly through your nose, keeping your breathing controlled, your heart rate below 140 to 150, and it's something you enjoy, gets you outdoors in that case, then you would go for a run and that sort of thing. So to answer your question, if we're doing intervals right now, which those will be coming in your programming, I would say probably it might be a little bit too much right now, or the timing may not be most appropriate for that sort of thing, at least at this point. And it definitely doesn't qualify as active recovery in that sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So am I, as a result, am I not giving my body enough time to recover if I do that? What are the consequences?
So at least at the fitness level that most of us are at, which varies, but none of us is a high level athlete, a professional athlete, a CrossFitter, however you want to look at that. Our bodies, just because of the rigors of life and our nutrition being work in progress, our sleep habits, which we'll work on a little bit later, sometimes being consistent, our stress management variables and that sort of thing. It takes time to recover, and the times that between training sessions, so Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, in between Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or whatever your split looks like right now, depending on what track you're on, we need as much recovery time as possible. So if we're doing, another high intensity session, or we're doing another resistance training session because we quote unquote feel like we should, or whatever, it is entirely possible, all things considered, that our body is probably not being given the opportunity to recover that it would need, all things being equal. And what you'll see is we'll start to put a little bit more work, for lack of a better term, in between some of those workout sessions as the program progresses, as we begin to discuss things like sleep, as we begin to discuss things like hydration, as we get into topics like recovery and stress management and that sort of thing. So we'll evolve your system and put you in a better position to recover right now. But in terms of getting them recovering from the prior session and getting yourself in a best position to be ready for the session to come, in that sense, at least at this point, we're probably not putting ourselves in a position for best recovery if we're doing some high intensity stuff. And the consequences are just that. It's hormone distribution in the body. It's using a muscle that still may be sore or under recovered in a sense. If we've had a history of injuries and that sort of thing, even though we may not acutely feel discomfort or pain in that area, we may be overstimulating it and putting it in a compromised position potentially as well. So whether there's direct or indirect consequences of sorts, it's probably still, to your point, not recovering in an ideal situation, at least yet, if there's high intensity work happening between those sessions, Rich.
Okay. Yeah, I was thinking that with the schedule I have right now, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, that I'm not getting a a cardio workout of any sort. And so if I would do more cardio work on the off days, that would be beneficial. But it sounds like what you're saying is that's coming, and don't need to work on that right now.
It's coming, and you're getting that quote unquote cardio or that aerobic work via your active recovery days. So going for a walk, a leisurely bike ride, taking the kids for a walk in the wagon, walking the dog, things like that. It doesn't necessarily have to be high intensity. Intensity is as much less of a variable compared to just consistency of movement in general. So ways to combat that would be, just as I said, getting some more of that purposeful recovery type of work in there, going for a walk, walking the dog, working in the yard, washing the car, moderate to light landscaping work, things like that. And then the other thing too is to supplement that is activity levels throughout the day. So anything from fidgeting to standing more, taking the stairs, parking far away, a lot of that old school stuff. I actually do a 10 to 12 minute walk after each meal. I find that it helps with digestion. And in my particular case, I don't want to burn excess calories because I'm trying to keep body fat levels low and add muscle. So it gets a sense where that's 30 cumulative minutes a day that I get in addition to any active recovery type movements that I choose, so on and so forth. So there's cardio, but there's also those other ways to kind of find additional movement and activity in throughout the day. So I would, if it was me, and if I may, I would actually, at least for now, kind of focus on that aspect of things. And we'll get into some intervals and some weighted carries and some different things pretty soon. And that will start to kind of bridge that gap that you may be perceiving, even if that may not be the case. It'll make you feel a little bit better in terms of peace of mind here to come.
Okay, good. I look forward to seeing what's coming then.
Sure, absolutely. It's a good question. It's always a concern is, are we doing enough? Could we be doing more? And in most senses, and we'll talk about this in the second semester of the program, less is actually more, and consistency in terms of our nutrition and just movement in general matters much more than intensity or any of that additional stuff that you hear a lot about.
Well, I'm happy with, in general, with the progress I've seen with both the exercises, being able to increase weight a little bit now, and also then the various measurements being taken. So, as far as all that is going, I'm really encouraged.
Yeah. Yeah, and for those of us, that brings up a point. For those of us that are seeking, getting larger, mass gain, adding muscle and that sort of thing, a lot of the times, a lot of us that have struggled with that in the past, one of the things that has been the case is that we've been doing too much additional activity, and either not letting the body recover, or some of the additional calories, for lack of a better term, that we do start to put in through our diet, we're quickly burning off. And if you're somebody who is in that muscle gain group and has had the super shake habit and the deep squat habit, and they're doing the 2 servings of everything, that additional movement, especially at this juncture in the program, may very well be counterproductive to what you're striving for. So that's just another quick thought to that end as well.
Okay.
Let's stay in touch on that, and we'll just, as new phases unfold and stuff, check in, let me know how you're feeling. Let's make sure you feel settled and comfortable.
All right. And I just because of my work commute, I end up walking 50 to 60 minutes a day.
Nice.
Besides everything else.
Yeah.
So, all of the exercise is going well.
Yeah. That sounds like an asset as well. So sweet. Glad to hear that. I wish more people could do that or had the ability to do that.
Yeah. Well, stuck with it.
Yeah, I hear you.
It's a good thing, but I don't have many other choices for my work commute.
No, I understand.
All right.
Cool, man. Keep me posted.
Yep.
Anything else, guys? About 40 minutes in now. 35, 40 minutes.
I was going to mention, I feel what Richard is saying. I mean, I've struggled with that in the past too, of always trying to do more instead of focusing on doing better with what I had, better with the workouts I had. And just, it's given me more time now to focus on food prep with the extra time, slowing down, making time for meals, and instead of always looking for more different workouts to do.
Yeah, you want to find some opportunity to move every day, I would say, Monday through Sunday. You want to be moving. You want to be active. Obviously, on the resistance training days, that activity is covered by your strength training and resistance training. On the days that you're doing active recovery, whether you choose a light run or a bike ride or just a brisk walk or being active in the yard, the biggest thing is that we want to do just the opposite of sitting and find as much movement as possible. Because as we know, sitting is the new smoking, as they say, as cheesy as that sounds, and it causes us to tighten up, and we get muscle imbalances, and we get stiff, and we don't feel good. And a lot of that is just movement. I mean, the next time you, especially the muscle gain guys, and even the fat loss guys, if you find that you eat past 80% full for whatever reason, or you muscle gain guys, if you feel like, you're still struggling with getting some of the food in because you feel full or close to it and you're uncomfortable, the next time in either one of those scenarios, go for a 10-minute walk after you finish that meal. You'll find it's amazing how much better you feel in terms of getting that digestion rolling and getting that food moving, as opposed to the alternatives. So, but yeah, in that sense, and we'll talk about it, like I said, in the second half of the program, less movement, less training overall is more. A lot of times people feel like they need to add more exercise in or more training in, and it's usually and often just the opposite. We just probably need to add in more overall activity and or decrease the frequency of some training and movement in general. So we'll be getting into that too. It's a common concern, as you say, Philip, and it's something that a lot of people struggle with. I know that's something you still go back and forth with at times on as well.
Yeah, I do. I have to catch myself.
Oh, I do the same thing. It's tough. I'm not.
There's a lot of noise.
Huh?
A lot of noise out there.
There is. So thanks for hopping in there. Okay, guys, anybody have anything else? that they either want to add to that discussion, to revisit about carbs or fats, to go over in addition to anything that we haven't covered yet. So cool, as always, the session is recording. I'll stay on as long as anybody needs to. If there's something they may want to bring up but not necessarily uncomfortable with the group, I can switch the recording off. So if anybody doesn't have anything else, let's go ahead and adjourn there. And I appreciate you guys joining. If you do think of a particular question or comment that you had that for whatever reason is escaping you here, just tap that Contact Your Coach tab sometime today, between today and Monday morning, and fill me in on what's on your mind, and I'll do my best to address it. If not, you guys have a great weekend, and I'll be in touch next week.
Yeah, thanks.
Cheers, Scott.
Absolutely. Thank you.